Oh yeah, here we go again. Last time we had spoken about an overpaid New York Rangers vet and the potential of him getting traded to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, we all know Jacob Trouba, former captain of the team, didn't end up getting traded to the Red Wings. He got traded over to the Anaheim Ducks. But now we are talking about yet another guy in New York who is apparently now on the market. Who really knows? We'll get into that information in a second here, and asking whether or not he could be what Detroit really needs. Now, before we get into all that, I wanted to give my spread out, semi-weekly sort of update with the Detroit Red Wings, because unfortunately I do feel like I have been ignoring a lot of these Wings conversations, especially when it comes to some of the big talking points regarding the Red Wings games. This is because the Wings have been pretty trash this season. However, they did have themselves a very strong win against the Buffalo Sabres 2 nights ago. It was a really big game. Big comeback victory, lots of physicality, Mo Seider taking things into his own hands. It's awesome to see the big man have that sort of leverage, that stopping power within the room and for the team. Sebastian Cossa also, by the way, shout out to him getting his first NHL victory. But with the Red Wings in mind, this Buffalo Sabres game was a flash in the pan when you compare it to what the Wings have been doing recently. Before that, they'd been losing some games, they hadn't been looking all too motivated. It's been a very so-so year for Detroit. Which is why we're going over to an article published on SportsIllustrated.com. This is SI.com, actually. The article was published by Nick Horwath from earlier last week on December 5th, and it talks about how another star has been added to the New York Rangers trade list. The Rangers' recent struggles have spawned even more trade rumors of key faces. The article opens up by talking about how the Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba conversations were very big deals, and they were talking points, and everybody was buzzing about where these guys could get moved, but then it brings up a different name. A recent report has indicated that forward Mika Zibanejad is the newest name up for grabs. According to a source with Responsible Gambler, the Rangers aren't starting a fire sale, but they are keeping their options open. Mika Zibanejad is out there for sure, the source told RG. They're not necessarily trying to get rid of him, but they let teams know that he could be available for the right price. Zibanejad has been a staple of the Rangers roster since 2016, and one of the most consistent players in the league. A goal shy of 300 in his NHL career, Zibanejad has posted 696 points and 872 games played. And the funny part is, this article was published last week. Guess what? Mika Zibanejad is still, as of Wednesday, December 11th, at 698 points and 299 goals in 875 games. He is 1 goal away from 300. He is 1 assist away from 400. He is 2 points away from 700. Like, what? Talk about consistency there, and being neck and neck, statistically speaking, but ultimately he did add 2 assists since the time the article was published. However, with the Rangers spiraling out, Zibanejad's future on Broadway is not guaranteed. Even if he is under contract until 2030, the Rangers are looking for a wake-up call, and moving on from a key veteran might be their focus. Usually it's the head coach that pays the price, and that could still happen, the source told RG. Right now it looks like Drury is determined to make an example with the players and with a big name. This article was correct, because there was a Jacob Trouba trade, but the fact that Chris Kreider's name is still out there, and the fact that even Mika Zibanejad's name could be tossed out there too, is interesting to me. And I wanted to dive into this because there was another article posted on Red Wings Insider, which we'll take a look at in a second, that goes over Mika Zibanejad and asks whether or not he would be a good fit in Detroit. Mika Zibanejad, just in case you needed the report, is 31 years old, 6'2", 203 right-handed center, signed on till the end of 2030, making $8.5 million a year. This season, Zibanejad is on pace for 61 points, as he currently has 20 points in 27 games played. A guy who once had 5 goals in a game and who had a 40-goal season a few seasons ago is now on pace for only 15 goals this year. Zibanejad also had a career high of 91 points and 39 goals in 2022-2023. Last year he had 72 points, so he was still a very good point producer. Being able to attain these point numbers, 74 points in 82 games, 75 points in only 57 games played, which was 1920. What a crazy year there for Zibby. Being able to do this and then decline over to what he's doing right now, is somewhat of a red flag, and a lot of people will be going out there and be quick to point out that for the Rangers, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, some of these top guys haven't necessarily been as productive as you would have expected. They're not carrying their weight. Panarin is okay, I guess you could say. Will Cooley has been doing fantastic. I'd been spoken about Jonathan Quick as well, and how he had himself a hot, blistering start to the year. That is, until he got lit up the other night against the Seattle Kraken. We can forget about that 6-goal-against game. But either way, with the Rangers being in some sort of a dire spot this season, you can start talking about the idea of a Zibanejad trade. It's not impossible, the source is going out there and talking about, and with this in mind, I wanted to turn your attention over to this article on Red Wings Insider. Jack Sutherland asked the question, could the Detroit Red Wings make a blockbuster trade to bring a Swedish star to Hockeytown? Though his contract could be an obstacle, could Red Wings GM Steve Yzerman be enticed to acquire this Swedish star from the New York Rangers? The Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres aren't the only teams in the Eastern Conference who have struggled heavily as of late, but what's surprising about this new team is that they were considered bona fide Stanley Cup contenders. The Rangers, who made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year for the second time in 3 years, have somehow dropped 8 of their last 10 games. They've already made a monumental trade, sending captain Jacob Trouba to the Ducks, and in return they had received a depth defenseman and a 4th-round pick. But is another top Rangers player on the block? The article then talks about Mika Zibanejad and brings up the same ideas that were talked about on the SI article. Could the Red Wings come calling? This article then goes out there and asks, as you know, the Red Wings have a rich heritage of Swedish royalty in the NHL, and Mika Zibanejad could be intrigued to don the winged wheel like so many of his great countrymen did before him. However, the major obstacle for Zibanejad, like Trouba would have been, would be taking on his hefty $8.5 million AAV for the next several years. He is under contract through 2029. Now here's the thing, when you talk about overpaid, middle-aged Detroit Red Wings centers, there are 2 names that come to mind right away. Everybody talks about JT Compher, everybody talks about Andrew Kopp. Good on at least one of those guys for getting themselves a goal yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 nights ago against the Buffalo Sabres. But at the same time, Mika Zibanejad would technically be better than those 2. It's just he would still be overpaid, and he might still be a little bit disappointing if you were to really boil it down. If Mika Zibanejad is having a difficult time producing points with Alexis Lafreniere and Artyom Panarin and Chris Kreider in significant capacities like previous years, what makes you think he's going to be able to do that with this year's version of Vladimir Tarasenko, for example, who's being forced to play on the left side and whose right side tendencies are being totally washed out of his game? He is a different player in a bad way. Do you think a guy like Mika Zibanejad could actually improve playing alongside of a Christian Fischer or something if you really wanted to push it? How would Zibby play with a Michael Rasmussen? While it is true that I think he would be a lot better than some of the other options the Wings have already, maybe not Marco Kasper per se, but having Compher and Kopp, I'd rather have Mika Zibanejad there, give Kasper a little bit more breathing room and sheltered minutes. At the same time, the question is this the time to really believe in a guy like Mika Zibanejad, who will be on the books till the end of 2030? That's a long time in the future. Trouba at least had the benefit of having his contract expire in 2026, so there was a lot less of a timeline there. But ultimately, you gotta remember some of the things we had learned about the Trouba conversation too. The Wings wanted to get him bad. There were rumors, there were reports, there were confirmations from people around the NHL that, yeah, the Wings were close. But they could not pull off a Trouba trade because they could not free up the money to do so. And in order to free up the money to do so, Steve Yzerman had to ask some of his more expensive players, hey, can you waive your no-move clause in order for us to send you away so we could free up your money? Those players said no. So it says to me that whether it's for Trouba freeing up $8 million for him, or Zibanejad freeing up $8.5 million for him, maybe a little bit less with salary retained, who really knows, it seems to me that if the problem was that Steve Yzerman couldn't free up the money because none of the players that he wanted to ask were actually willing to move, then you wouldn't really be able to trade for Mika Zibanejad either. Whether it's Trouba or Zibanejad, the process in which you free up the dollar amounts to get that trade done is the same, and Steve Yzerman would not be able to do that. Maybe you trade away a different player. Maybe if you're thinking about freeing up space for Trouba, you trade away a Jeff Petrie, for example. Or if you're trying to free up space for Zibanejad, you trade away a different guy. Maybe that's the case, but still, at the end of the day, it doesn't really seem like an option that's all too possible here. Would it be cool, though? I think it would probably be cool, and imagine having a guy who was a 90-point player in the past suiting up with the winged wheel. That'd be great. I don't think it's likely, but I still want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this idea of Zibanejad over to Detroit? Both articles will be linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed this Zibanejad Trolls 99, and bye.